My mouse cursor has disappeared. So that's that's a fun new development. Okay, excellent connection. I think we might be good. I want to make sure the sound is good. So that's a fun new development. Okay, excellent connection. I think we might be good. You say something. I need to see. I need to hear.
Yes.
That's a fun new development.
Hello.
Okay, excellent connection.
Coming through loud and clear, I hope.
We might. You say something. I need to see. I need to hear.
Yes.
That's okay. You are louder than me. That's fine. I expected. Okay, that should hopefully be okay. Is the stream moving? Are we moving? Oh my god. What is happening? I can hear it. Oh, I bet it's because Discord's frozen. That's all it is. It's just because Discord is frozen. It's gonna move here in a minute. Yeah, okay. We living. Just let me do one more tweak. You can go ahead and share the link if you would.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I'm gonna do a quick tweak here. Get that out of here. Okay, that looks better. One of these days I'll have proper, because it's always just gonna be the two of us. I'll be able to one day just set up like what I was doing with Skyhoppers with the videos for a while, whereas like an overlay with our names and that kind of thing. But I just haven't done that yet because I've been monumentally busy.
Understandable.
Was it Dakota's? It wasn't a wedding. It was very explicitly not a wedding. It was Dakota's celebration of love with his partner Kenzie. A commitment, rather, on Saturday. And it's like, it's in French Lick. That means nothing to you, but I just let it be known that means it's way the hell out there. And the whole time, like,
it's been mentioned before.
Yeah, of course, you're familiar with French Lick. The 4 months or whatever that was leading up to it, I was just like, why is it all the way out in French Lick? This is ridiculous. Come on, it's so far away. It's only an hour, but it's like, it's out in the middle of nowhere. And Allison and I are driving out there, and you hit southern Indiana, it starts to get really hilly, and I'm like, oh my god, these are the most beautiful trees I've ever seen. Like, fall was in full swing, and I'm like, it was like 70 degrees too. It was like the perfect day for it. It was so nice.
That's good.
Yeah, I saw a couple friends from out of town too, or not. One friend that I just haven't seen in a while. Another friend who moved out of town. Hadn't seen them in a while. So that was fun. All in all, not too bad. I will say, knowing full well that Dakota might hear this at some point, if he decides to show up and watch the stream, his friend did something a little rude. Dakota's friend, two sets of Dakota's friends. We got sat at a table. Not like assigned seats, but Dakota was like, "Oh, you guys can just sit here." And we had some awkward conversation, as you know, it's strangers, like, of course it's always a little awkward, but it smoothed out a little bit. Had some awkward conversation. We got up to get our food. We came back, those other 2 sets of people had moved away from our table.
Oh no.
And it was like, it wasn't just us, because there was another set, like my friend and my friend that I hadn't seen in a while, his 2 roommates stayed at the table. And we had a great conversation with them, had a lot of fun. They're from Bloomington, or they live in Bloomington too. So obviously there was a lot of shared experience, common ground there. But I'll never forget. This is a friend too that Dakota has mentioned to me before, and I have been made aware of. And I'm just like, yeah, she was nice while she was at the table.
And they left.
Then they all left. So anyway,
to quote our favorite character, how woot.
Exactly. Oh, shiz. I need to delete all of that. Okay. Do we want to get started?
I mean, I guess we can.
Did the link get shared in our Discord yet?
I did. I put
Okay.
it in our channel there and tweeted it out. We've informed everyone as well as we can.
Okay. I guess I didn't see the um
The
notification.
Discord
'Cause
notification.
I'm in streamer mode,
Mm,
so Discord turns off all of its things.
for the best, probably.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah, we even have some Star Wars news we can talk about a little bit. I don't know if you've seen.
I don't think I have.
Well, then I'll let you be surprised then, because it's relatively exciting, I guess.
I've seen some. Is it the movie rumors?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, it's less rumors now because some of the big sites have reported on it. So.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Well, I
yeah,
read some headlines,
get
and
into it.
I'll be honest, Cole. I saw those headlines in my feed reader and was like, "This is bullshit. I'm not reading. I'm not clicking on this.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm not clicking on this." But if you think that it is worthy, worthy of discussion,
It's worth
we can
mentioning,
do-
I think.
Okay. Okay. Hi, Mogo. Welcome back.
There's nothing definitive, but
No, of course not. Are you
nothing's
ready to?
definitive until there's a dang trailer.
I was gonna say, yeah. Don't act like we get stuff that's definitively definitive. You ready to record?
Yeah. Let's rock and roll.
Okay.
I'm recording locally.
We are streaming, which means I assume that means we're good. I am also recording locally. She's Worst theme is scaring the crap out of me currently. Okay, it's passed. I'm actually going to crank my volume a little bit more, I guess. Okay, I'll clap. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, go. I just want everyone to know, well, Mogo, I guess. I've done this when I count down. I go 3, 2, 1, go. I have done the little hand thing literally since day one. So I don't know what that's about.
It's not just a show for the viewers.
Yeah. What happened to Skyhoppers? Skyhoppers, there are 4 very busy people on that podcast. That's truly what happened. It was gonna be me and Cole yesterday, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna put it off and say Cole and I are just gonna do Skyhoppers tomorrow night before we do Obroa-Skywalkers, as we do. Okay.
You're gonna like chop the front half of the episode off and put it in the Skyhoppers feed.
I could. I mean, conceivably, I could.
Yeah.
Something to think about.
Heck, it might be long enough just to be an episode. Knowing us.
That's what I mean. That's not a bad idea. I didn't think about that. Okay. Let's get into this podcast. And maybe another podcast. But definitely this one. Okay, here we go. Listen up, library patrons, and welcome back to Obroa-Skywalkers. I am one of your librarians, Ben, and I am joined by my fellow librarian, Cole.
Howdy, howdy.
I think my desk is a little high. One moment. This is better. This is better. Because I was just like, I'm not a very tall, as you've learned, Cole, I'm not a very tall person to begin with. I don't need my desk looking down on me to make me even appear even less tall. You know? That's not energy that I need in my life. Oh my god, sorry. I'm clipping my microphone. Everything's terrible. I've got to turn myself down now. I think it was. I was too tall. The microphone was too tall, and I wasn't speaking directly into it. Anyway, apologies, Cole.
It's all good. It's all good.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Cool.
Yeah. We had a busy weekend because it was our local town festival this weekend.
Okay.
The Sweet Potato Festival here in Golden.
Sweet
the biggest
Potato
thing
Festival?
that Golden has. Yeah.
That sounds pretty sick, honestly.
Yeah. It's always a good time. And I was actually helping my brother. He's actually run sound for the whole event the last 3 years, and I was helping be roadie for him, basically doing whatever. So I was doing that the last couple of nights, which was really fun.
I bet. I for a long time thought I didn't like sweet potatoes. But then I grew up and realized no, those things are actually so good. And it reminds me, there's a podcast. It's a pretty well-known podcast. I might have mentioned it before. It's called Small Town Murder. Mm-hmm. I, as a rule, am kind of true crime podcasts. Like, there's nothing wrong with listening to them, of course. Like, for me personally, I feel a little weird sometimes with that whole kind of thing. Because I'm like, well, people were murdered. Like, this was an actual crime. But also, they have, like, really long episodes. And sometimes when I'm just, like, looking for something to listen to that I don't have to listen to the whole like, intently to, because I can just kind of fall in and out and I'm not really that committed to. It's a good one to have on while I'm working. They, of course, focus on murders in small towns. And it seems like every time they come across a town, they find some little small festival like that, like the Sweet Potato Festival. So as soon as you mentioned that, I'm just like, if there was a murder in Golden, Texas, they would be talking about the Sweet Potato Festival for sure.
Yep. And this was also the 40th anniversary of the Sweet Potato Festival.
Do you grow a lot of sweet potatoes in the area?
I think there used to be a lot more. There's not nearly as many now, but there used to be a lot of farmers around here that did sweet
Just
potatoes.
kind of
they still have it as they'll auction off sweet potatoes and stuff like that at the event. And like it's a pretty big deal. Like there's a parade and animal shows and all that kind of stuff.
Fun.
There used to be even like a carnival type thing, but they kind of stopped doing that. But they have booths and but I didn't really get to see very much of it because I was basically working the stage the whole time.
Working the stage, yeah. Didn't get to do anything fun. Well, I hope you got to eat some sweet potatoes at least.
I got to have a corn dog, which is great.
So it's like fair food generally.
Yeah, okay, which is that's exactly what I want: a corn dog and a funnel cake.
I was gonna say hard to go wrong. I today, I don't know why we're talking about our lives so heavily at the beginning of this episode. Apologies.
I just brought it up.
It's brief. Today I was working outside in the afternoon, as I do. And I was in a meeting. Not a meeting I needed to be particularly present for, but a meeting all the same. My cat was outside with me. Good old Cammy, friend of the pod, pet. She's a real one. She decided she was gonna play with the little garter snake that was in my backyard, and I saw she was going crazy over something. I'm like, what's that? And then I see the little snake go I see his tail, and I'm like, oh, expletive. I'm like, not because I thought she was going to get hurt, which of course was a possibility, but also it's like, she's going to kill this snake. She will kill this snake because it's her favorite thing. It's a string that moves on its own. It's impossible for her to love anything more. So I walk over and I'm like, well, this can't happen, cat. I'm sorry. And I'm thinking, I'm just going to grab her and I'm just going to take her inside. And instead, this happened. If you're watching the stream, I guess it's just Mogo, but in the future, if you come back to this stream, this is your little warning to close your eyes for like 5 seconds. It's not so bad. It's not bad, but it is a cat scratch on my arm. So instead, she gave me this. You can see it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't look that bad in the camera, but it is inflamed. It hurts. I washed it with the antibacterial soap. I think it's going to be fine. Doesn't make me any happier with my cat. Especially because I let her back outside later, because you know me, I can't be mad at her forever. I let her back outside a little while later, and I picked her up when it was time to go inside and carried her in, and it was like nothing ever happened. And I'm like, you piece of crap. It could have just been like this both times. And then I don't know. I was mad. I was mad. I was mad. It was one of those things where I like threw her down when I got inside. I'm like, go away. Get out of my face. Anyway, before we get into some news, there's a little bit of, I guess you're calling it news. I assumed it was a rumor. You are calling it news. Not
much of a difference these days.
I guess. I want to report in on something that I've been doing. I finished, as I mentioned, I think last week, I finished Saga of Seven Sons, Book 4, which I think is called Metal Swarm. I don't remember. Maybe?
I think it's what you said last time.
Okay. Sounds familiar to you? All right.
Yeah.
But I finished that up, and I was like, okay, what am I going to read next? And I was like, oh, right. I picked up Path of Deceit. First part of Phase 2 of the High Republic. I have some initial thoughts. I'm about 100 pages in. These are all, of course, spoiler-free. My first thought, this is going to be on brand, I think, for both of us. This is not an assault on the medium. This isn't or the genre. This is not any of that. However, I do wish that this phase was not starting with a young adult novel. That much I will say. And that's all I'm going to say about that. That said, it started off kind of slow, and I was like, I don't know. One of the main characters named Kevmo, and I'm like, that's a bad name. That might be one of the worst Star Wars names I've yet to come across. Again, that said, 100 pages in, I'm thoroughly invested. I'm thoroughly enjoying this book. And you know, it is still a young adult novel, so like your mileage may vary.
Who's that one by?
That is Justina Ireland and Tessa something. Oh no. One moment. I've just seen, it's one of those things where I just know Justina Ireland's name because I've been so familiar with with Tessa Gratton. That's it. That's the one. I always think it's funny when books are written by two authors because I am always trying to like find where, you know, with Steve Perry, it's obvious. It's like, oh, is someone ogling a woman? Steve Perry wrote this part. But like with other authors,
or Vader doing something cool.
You're right. There's some good and bad there. But I'm always trying to figure out like who's who, right? It's pretty seamless in this. I can't tell one more than the other. And obviously that doesn't really matter one way or the other. I think a lot of the characters are interesting. Well, she's on the cover, Marta Rowe. Obviously, that's it seems like she's going to be pretty important. There's just a lot of stuff it feels like it's seeding and setting up stuff from phase 1, you know, being 200 years in the past or whatever, but not in a way that's like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You know what I mean? It's like, it's no more so than is just because of the fact that it's like, oh, well, these are important players that, you know what I mean? It's a story that's focused on one thing. So, of course, there's going to be carryover and stuff that could be seen as wink, wink, nudge, nudge, but doesn't feel like that. It's good. It's definitely, I'd say at this point, only 100 pages in, it's my second favorite High Republic young adult novel, I think. Cool. But it's good. I'm excited to see where the adult novels go, of course, being an adult. But YA's fine. YA's fine. I give it a hard time, but really, I enjoy it. I do enjoy it. But yeah, that and Bane, I figure is probably, you know, honestly, Cole, I haven't been reading that much. Are you familiar with Arma 3?
I'm aware of it. I don't know much about it beyond it being like a shooter, like a sim shooter kind of.
Right? It's I don't want to make a big deal out of it, but it is more of a sim, I think, than a shooter. It's like one of those like, oh, you got shot twice, bye. Game, you know what I mean? It's not like Call of Duty where you duck behind it. Not there's anything wrong with ducking behind a wall and recovering some health.
Wait for the jam to go away from your face.
Yeah, exactly. No, the jam, you die and it's over. And it's the tactics are so deep. Playing with other, I've been playing with my brothers and solo. It's a ton of fun. It's so much fun. If any of you play, hit me up. I'm looking for people to play with because this is my hyperfixation right now. That, and of course, still Pokemon, and now, of course, well, not now, but Star Wars has worked its way back into the forefront with Path of Deceit and Andor, and it's all just right there. And I'm just thinking about too many things at once, and it's exhausting, but fun at the same time.
Fair.
But so yeah, haven't been reading a ton outside of, you know, when I'm going to bed, but I do stay up far later than I should reading because it's either Path of Destruction or Path of Deceit. So yeah, that's what I've been up to. I haven't made any fun acquisitions or anything recently, I don't think, at least on the Star Wars front. I'm waiting on my Japanese copy of Omega Ruby, but that is coming from Japan, so it could still be a minute on that one.
And the new Pokemon game is coming out pretty soon, right?
Pretty soon. I'm
November-ish?
November 18th, 19th, somewhere in there. Yeah, I'm not ready. I am playing. I'm still like trying to play Sapphire. I'm playing Pokemon X for some ungodly reason. Just even though I've got 335 hours on that file, I'm just like, I think I want this Pokemon. I think I want to catch this Pokemon, and then I play until I get that Pokemon, and I'm like, I think I want to catch this Pokemon. It's just how it be. But yeah, Pokemon's coming. Star Wars is coming, Andor, and then this week, Tales of the Jedi.
Yeah, we're getting a double dose this week.
I'm not ready. Glad that I don't spend as much time on the internet as I used to, because I don't have to worry about seeing anything that I don't want to. But I also think that work might feel like it kind of flies by on Wednesday. Feel like I'm not gonna have to worry too much about finding things to occupy my time during work. We got a little blurb of news that said those episodes were going to be between it said 14 and 20 minutes or something.
Yeah, I think so.
Somewhere in there.
The screeners have already gone out to different reviewers and stuff, so a couple of them have posted, some details about, the episode lengths. And I think even the episode titles may have been posted by somebody.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
So, yeah. Again, nothing super telling about any of it, but,
sure.
Interesting.
Well,
I'm pretty sure the one we watched at Celebration was called Life and Death. I think that's
familiar.
what it was called.
That sounds familiar.
That was definitely amongst the titles that they posted. So it's at least that one checks out as far as, I know it's accurate at least.
Well, yeah, it's whenever someone starts talking about comic book characters that are going to be making cameos, I'm going to start being a little wary of
Yeah, I'm curious I haven't seen any more talk about the contradicting stuff, and I feel like that would have been coming out depending on different people. Whoever got review copies of it might have been mentioning that kind of stuff. But
it's hard too, though, because it's hard to say just because people just don't take, I feel like you got to find the people that really take that kind of thing seriously. And a lot of people are watching things in a way that arguably, I think you could say is maybe how creators mean them to be, which is just you take this thing for what it is and how it ties into what you've seen in a big picture sense. And I definitely think that's the kind of thing that Dave Filoni is going for sure. So I think if you get people who are watching it that way, we're just not going to hear about the contradictions or anything until it's far too late. But Mogo brings up a good point here in our chat because, again, we are live streaming on our YouTube channel. It is on the Obroa-Skywalker's YouTube channel this time. I finally went through all that setup, and I'm going to make it look prettier in the future. But again, there's too many Pokemon to catch. I just have not had time to put something together. But I will in the near future. Next week, hopefully this looks a little better. But, lost my train of thought. Oh, Mogo in our chat talking about Dooku Jedi Lost and the potential of it being retconned. I feel similarly to Mogo, who says he will be mad if it is ignored or retconned, and I agree. I think that given the kind of vignette nature of these, there is... Okay, listen. Bad Batch. I think what happened on season 1, episode 1 of the Bad Batch, not a good look. We know this. Not a good look. Don't like that happened. Don't like that those retcons went down the way they did for no good reason. But I feel like it makes some amount of sense. Dave Filoni's these are my characters. This is how I always imagined this going. I felt like he had a reason. He had a place. Some sort of creative control to say, this is how it went. The vignette nature of these stories makes me think that if Dooku Jedi Lost is retconned in any significant way, it's going to feel intentional. It is going to feel no. It's going to feel worse to me, I think. That said, I don't think it's impossible. And a small inconsistency here or there is not going to bug me. It's not. But anything significant, that's going to be just... It's coming from the one guy who does it over and over again, if it happens. And it's just not going to feel good. It's not going to feel good.
Every time it happens, it's more and more of a pattern, and it...
Exactly. That's it, I think. A one-time thing doesn't make that much of a difference to me. And I promise, not going to hang on this. Not going to hang on this. One-time thing doesn't make that much of a difference to me. But when it's a pattern of showing disregard for what other people have done, I don't like that. I don't think that's a good look. And that's all I will say on the matter. Have you been up to anything? It's been quiet outside of Andor, I think, for the most part.
Yeah, it really it's just been Andor and Bane. That's really been the only things I've been up to, Star Wars wise. So I guess we can get into this little bit of news stuff we've got. So I'm going to go back to the very beginning of this news, which actually goes back to like March, I think, is whenever the first inklings of it were
Really?
linking out.
Okay.
Yeah. There was a report way back in March. I don't even remember who it was by or anything of Damon Lindelof working on some Star Wars stuff, some Star Wars movie he was like writing or something. It was extremely vague, just a report from some insider guy, and there wasn't really anything corroborating it, I don't think. But then on Sunday, Deadline reported, like verifying that basic report, saying that Lindelof was writing some Star Wars movie, and there's also a director attached. It's Charmine Obaid-Chinoy, who was just recently directed a couple of episodes of Marvel's Miss Marvel TV show.
Okay.
And she's done some other stuff too, but that's the most recent and probably prominent thing people are aware of. So that was the report yesterday. So that was corroborating that. And then today, just like an hour or two ago, the Hollywood Reporter puts out that confirming all this basically is like and they've even heard that apparently shortly after Celebration, Lucasfilm put together a writer's room with Lindelof heading it up, and then there's some other people involved. Let me see if I can find the names here. I've got the article pulled up. Justin Britt Gibson, who wrote for The Strain and the Counterpart series. Let's see. Patrick Somerville, Raina McClendon. Like, there's several writers. A couple of them were involved in Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Willow series that's coming up.
Okay.
Like, there's several names on here, and Dave Filoni's thrown in here apparently as well as being maybe involved in it in some capacity. But a movie's being worked on. They've been working on it apparently at least since, shortly after Celebration, putting something like breaking the story, and now they're like directly writing the script. And it's supposed to be post Rise of Skywalker content, potentially with some of those characters following through.
I did see a blurb of a headline. Oscar Isaac saying his. Now, granted, I just read the headline. I did not read the whole article or the quote in context. Take that as you will. Oscar Isaac was quoted by somebody as saying his Star Wars burnout was over and he would like to come back and play Poe Dameron. And I am not at all saying that Lucasfilm and Disney's treatment of his character and him as an actor is in any way acceptable. However, I am glad to see that maybe, just maybe, assuming that his quote was meant as it was stated, he's like, it's still Star Wars, man. I'm still going to do it, Yeah.
Well, and I think he had a good experience with Moon Knight with Marvel.
Yeah.
So maybe that was, indication that, hey, maybe they've got a handle on things. Who knows?
And see, that's because obviously Rise of Skywalker, who's to say? We'll never know. That's one of those things I think they'll keep under wraps until we do get, 20 years down the line, the equivalent of the J.W. Rinsler making of this movie. People are less afraid to talk about it. But it is going to be a long time before we know what happened. But I would be, the confluence of things that led to that movie being the way that it is, I would love to see how much weight each factor had. It's like, delays, director change, like all like Disney meddling. How many of these things affected this thing in what ways? And it's possible that it's like even John Boyega has been on record as saying it's like, yeah, I would do Star Wars again if it's the right people. If it is, J.J. Abrams, if it's Kathleen Kennedy.
Unfortunately,
yeah.
He's like, it's J.J. Abrams that he wants. I'm like, did you see the same movie we saw?
Hey, you know what? You know what? Force Awakens holds up. Force Awakens stands up. But it's just that they gave him something to finish, which, as we all know, is not his forte. It's never been his forte. But, yeah. I don't know. My question, in the wake of this news, it is exciting. It is exciting that they are... Because I know there was some discussion in the Skyhoppers Discord about the future of Star Wars movies. Austin, I hope I'm not going out overstepping by quoting him without asking. Friend of both shows, was saying that he'd be okay with there never being another Star Wars movie, and that Star Wars is so much more than movie. And like, he didn't mean it in a negative way. I could tell how he meant it. It was like a very positive. Like, Star Wars is much more than that. Star Wars is much more than a movie to me. Also, there were concerns about like the diversity behind the camera, and the fact that Disney might not be willing to do that, to put enough effort into that, the way that Lucasfilm has done it or is working towards in like the television space. And of course, that's an incredibly valid concern, and it's one that I share, just not to the extent that I would be okay with there never being another movie. Like, that's where we disagree, I think, on that point. That said, I need there to be Star Wars movies. Also, we saw the what's it called? Just the release schedule, the production schedule.
Like,
what is
release calendar that
release
they have or
calendar?
something?
That's it. That's the one that I always hear. There's not a Star Wars movie till like what, 2025 on that thing?
I think so.
Which I guess if they're just now writing the movie, kind of tracks. That does track.
I mean, I'd rather have a good, long, healthy production cycle.
I guess you're right. I guess you're right. Let's see what new.
And if all these rumors are end up being true, this the director that they're supposedly got she's a Pakistani descendant woman. It's like, that's diversity behind the camera. I mean,
it is. So
that's at least a good sign if that ends up panning out.
Yes, and that's like, I don't know, Cole. I wish you hadn't said anything, because now my head's spinning. My head is spinning, because I mean, the assumption is that if this is a whole new thing post Rise of Skywalker, Taika Waititi's movie is by all accounts still happening. Ryan Johnson, God bless him. His movie
he every time he's interviewed, I feel like there's another bit about that, and he's
just like,
yeah, we're still doing it. I'm just busy.
I want to do it so bad. But see, that to me, obviously he's working on other things. He's working on a lot of other things. But if he gets, I mean, God forbid, 10 years. But if he gets 10 years to think about his Star Wars movies, Cole, I think they're going to be so good. I think they're going to be so good.
Yeah.
Mogos brings up the great
developing
point.
Entirely on his own. It's like, it sounds like a fantastic thing.
It does. And Mogo brings up the great point of it. Doesn't care what the medium is. Take your time. Do it right. And it's like, you know what? I think when movies, not always, but movies, things, when they have the time to be done right, they usually come out all right. For some reason, the first thing that popped in my head was Chinese Democracy by Guns N' Roses, which was, by all accounts, a huge disappointment for how long that album took to come out. And Cole's blank face is reminding me who I'm talking to. I'm sure somebody understands what I'm talking about.
Sorry. I'm sure somebody gets it.
Yeah, classic hard rock fans are on my side. Dad rock fans, thumbs up in the chat, please. But I don't know. I'm wondering, like, what could this be? And that's, I guess, kind of where we're at with all of the movies now. What could any of this be? I don't know. But just the fact that they're pushing for something conceivably in 2025, probably 3 years away.
Hopefully what this means is that, like, they've got this writer's room and these, people writing the movie, whatever, and that so whenever Celebration's in April, is that right?
I think so.
Hopefully when Celebration happens, they can come out and just, be like, hey, we've got this thing, it's already rolling. It'll have been enough time for them to actually, like, nail down what the script is going to be. And maybe even, have a title and some actors attached to it and such.
Yeah.
And not just, literally just a director and then, 6 months down the line, it's like, oh, it didn't work out. Here we go again.
And I don't know. I for some reason, I've got a good feeling about this one. Because I think that, Hollywood moves slowly. All of this stuff moves really slowly. I think it's very possible that Lucasfilm is starting to see, that's like, or has seen and is now starting to correct. They've been like, oh my God, it has been a rough a rough 7 years, depending on how you look at it. It's been a rough acquisition. And I'm hoping that now they're finally saying, all right, we found the direction we're going, and it's something that we can stick to. Because I think that even Rogue Squadron, that was announced, just shortly after, I guess Mando Season 2 was in progress at that time, I think.
Yeah.
But it's like Disney Plus was still finding its footing. All of this stuff is still finding its footing. But it's in a much better spot. So maybe if they know what their avenues are, know what their channels are, know where they want to focus their efforts and what they want to do and who they want to do it with, maybe that's enough. Maybe we can finally get something going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm always excited about the possibility of a Star Wars movie. I just wish I wasn't going to be 32 when it came out. That sounds pretty freaking bad to me.
I'll be older than that.
Well,
I don't want to think about it. Oh, and that reminds me. I thought about it earlier, and you just reminded me. This coming Sunday will be both my 31st birthday and the 10-year anniversary of Lucasfilm being purchased by Disney.
Right, we've talked about this
because of the same thing.
It's easy. It's easy for you to remember because they are the same thing. Oh,
10 years.
You said Sunday?
Sunday, yeah.
10 years. I can't even believe that. Like, I hardly even remember. This, not this registering, because I remember hearing about the acquisition and being like, new movies are coming. Absolutely. This is going to be so sick. Like, I remember being very excited for that, but I just hardly... 10, are you sure? 10 years? That just doesn't seem right.
Yeah, because it was on my 21st birthday.
Oh my God.
I remember it pretty distinctly.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well,
it's pretty wild.
We've, all in all, this is a big picture take here. I do think that it was worth it. I still do, at the end of the day, think this is worth it, because I think without it, it's created a lot of heartache. It's created a lot of strife. It's created a lot of just hurt feelings, bad feelings. But at the end of the day, I don't know if we would be here talking about Star Wars in the same capacity if it didn't happen.
Mm.
It's possible George Lucas would have handed over Lucasfilm to Dave Filoni, to Kathleen Kennedy anyway, and this thing would have continued, and maybe they could have revitalized it in a different way. But just, I think the influx of cash that Disney brought is what let them get to where they are now, for better or for worse. I guess maybe you could read that however you want.
Yeah, it's a complicated question.
It is. Well, because
I know I've thought over the years, like, I feel like if I could magically undo it, Thanos snap style. It's like, there's been times I'm like, I totally would do it if I could,
Yeah.
There's definitely been times I thought that. I don't know. It's one of those things I have to ponder.
I think about that, but honestly, for me, it comes down to the individual things. A lot of the individual things that wouldn't have happened if the acquisition never happened. Like, I think about Light of the Jedi. Honestly, I love that book. I think about that book. I think we would have gotten some semblance of the Thrawn stuff we've gotten anyway, just maybe less hamstrung by Rebels. Like maybe that could have even ended up being better somehow than it already was. But I think about, for all its faults, I think about Book of Boba Fett. I think about Light of the Jedi. I think about some of the comics. I think about some of these awesome things that we've gotten that we could not have gotten in pre-acquisition because they overwrite something else. They are, and I just think that, like, this is not me, like, lording fandom over you. This is not me gatekeeping. But I think for me personally as a fan, I would always rather have I don't want to say always rather have more, as though more is better, but opportunities for more good storytelling, despite how I might sound sometimes, is something that's important to me. A lot of times I'm just like, no, give me more of the same.
And it's hard to say, because if it hadn't happened, we would have continued getting Legend stuff.
Yep, exactly. Which of course
And
is why
it's
we're
stuff
here.
that we don't have, and we can't compare. You can't compare, what might have been.
Yep. Nope. And
with
it's like
what we've
maybe
got.
I would have gotten
to me,
the Legend.
like, if we would have still had Legend stuff, it would have never stopped. And wouldn't that be glorious? I can't. The potential of that in my brain is
I know.
impossible.
I'm right there with you. I didn't talk about that, but I am right there with you in that it's like, what if, right? What if Legends had just never stopped? Because as I go deeper into Legends and people keep saying, "Oh, it gets so bad, I'm just like, does it though? Because I'm still here for it. I'm still into it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe a continuation of Legends would have been just fine for me. But I just have to wonder, like, I do think though, and this is all speculation, doesn't matter at all.
But we also would have had like 12 seasons of Clone Wars by now.
We would have had a lot of Clone Wars. I mean, I think that that's another thing that makes it kind of difficult, since it kind of walks both timelines. Really makes you appreciate the work that kind of fans just put into like Wikipedia. God bless those Wikipedia editors, like just the work that they've all put in keeping that stuff alive. Clone Wars makes me think about the Wikipedia editors. That's what I think of when I think of Clone Wars.
Or poor hardworking souls.
Yeah. So I actually saw something interesting the other day. It's kind of related, speaking of wikis. The Zelda wiki has officially broken free from fandom.
Oh, interesting.
And I was just like, it's too much to hope for. It won't happen. It's too much to hope for. They won't do it.
Is it like independent now, or is there some other company?
I think
doing
it's
it,
independent. I only read one article. I could definitely stand to do a little more research on it, but they have split from fandom. There is always hope. That's what I'll say. That is what what have they given us? Hope. That one day Wikipedia, I can get back to that monobook skin and start living my best life whenever I'm digging up obscure information, rather than whatever the hell they are forcing me to look at now. But that is why, friends, you buy a Raspberry Pi and you block ads at the router level so nothing gets through. That reminds me, I don't have an article yet.
Well, we can talk about Andor in the meantime if we want to.
We can.
Speaking
talk
of
about
hope.
Andor.
Or the hopelessness.
Hopeless? Yeah, I was gonna say hope. Did we watch the same episode?
I mean, it's building up to hope.
It is, I guess. I had a friend ask me today about it, just kind of out of the blue. I don't talk to him a ton, but when I do, it's usually like a pretty good conversation. He just asked me out of the blue. He's like, "Is Andor the real deal? People are saying that it's Star Wars finally without the memes." I'm like, hey, it's Star Wars. It's all memes, buddy. You know it's all memes. But I don't mean that in the classic sense. I mean it in the... It's always been hard for me to encapsulate what I mean by memes when I say the memes. But hopefully you get the vibe, which is also vague. Doesn't matter. And I had to tell him, I'm like, no, dude, this show's the real deal. This show is the real deal. And I was like, it's focused on the story. It's not action figures on the screen. There are two characters that we have known. The way I described it, I'm like, there are two previously known characters in this show, and one of them is Mon Mothma, if that tells you anything about the level, like, who we're focusing on here. And he's just like, really? I've always thought Cassian Andor and Mon Mothma were like two of the sleepiest Star Wars characters. And I'm like, well, in a way, but not in the way that you mean. They are just very tired, I think, because they've been through a lot. No, I was talking to him about it, and I'm like, I cannot sell the show to you hard enough. Because he's just generally, I think, a little more critical of Star Wars. He's definitely not like a fandom menace kind of guy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a little more critical and just doesn't quite find as much enjoyment in a lot of the new stuff, I think.
Sure.
But I was just like, no, this is the best Star Wars TV show, and I think for, you know, me being your friend, having known you for a long time, this show will appeal to your sensibilities. If you like Rogue One, you will love this show. And it's because it's just more Rogue One, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I've got to stop saying that said. I've said it like a trillion times this episode, and I'm really getting really, really self-conscious about it. One thing that I noticed in this week's episode, do we have what was the title? Announcement. That was it. So much good happened in this episode, but some of the Coruscant architecture, it looked, I don't mean this, I'm going to use this for just so everyone knows what I'm talking about. Some of it looked almost like it was from Dune, in that kind of like brutalist, like the brutalist architecture. I loved it. Like when Vel was meeting with, what's her name? You pointed out her name. Luthen's assistant.
Clea.
Yep, Clea. When those two are meeting, and that, of course, they have that very dark conversation that I don't like, that I just kind of forgotten about until just now. That whole area, beautiful. I'm like, it's like the 1970s there, but it's like, you know, it's retrofuturism. It is the past vision of the future. I loved it. The production design on this show just continues to blow me away.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I'm assuming you were also a fan of the episode?
Oh, yes. Yeah, you could say that. It's pretty great.
What does that mean? You could say that. Does that mean that you are really into this episode? Like, this is one of the best ones?
Yeah, this is one of the best ones. I don't know if it's like the best, but man, it's interesting because it's the first episode to kind of break away from the structure that we've had leading up to it. This is very much like a transition. It's like fallout from the previous arc and transition into the next arc. And like basically no action to speak of.
None.
Just tons of great conversation and just feeling the oppression of the Empire. Like, I love Luthen's, like, his mentality is so interesting. Him, like, this whole thing was just to, like, give the Empire a push so that they'll go harder.
And that's what I mean.
Which will make people rise up faster. And that's what he wants. It's like, it's beautiful.
It's hard though, because we are faced with Mon Mothma's like very kind of, I don't want to say idealistic in that she is unaware of like what needs to be done kind of thing, or like she's naive. I'm not trying to say that at all. But we're faced with her thinking like, wait, so you mean you want people to be oppressed more? And Luthen is like, not in so many words. You know, like
people
no.
will suffer. He's like, that's the plan. It's like,
and it is,
yeah.
Just, and it was one of those. It was so good because I went from like just kind of liking Luthen and being like, yeah, we're on his side, to like feeling very conflicted about him, and not like to the point where I dislike him, but it did get to the point where it's just like, oh my god, that there was like a noted shift in how I felt about him.
He is all in on this. And like, I want to know what his history is. Like, what has brought him to this point?
Right. That's a great question.
And I saw some speculation on one of the subreddits I follow talking about that maybe he's gonna end up siding more with Saw and the partisans.
I think almost
like
certainly,
hardcore.
Right?
Like,
yeah.
Well, what if when they split off, like it's Luthen is actually the impetus for that, not Saw himself. Like, he becomes their, like, you know, patron guy, and Mon Mothma becomes the patron person for the rebellion as we end up knowing it. But I also wonder, like, is this going to bring Cassian and him into conflict? Like, is there going to be a showdown between the two of them? And
yeah, because then
if that happens, we know who's walking away.
Right.
It's like, I could totally see that happening.
But see, and I could too, but I'm kind of also
terrible things on behalf of the rebellion.
I'm at the point with him where it's like, it's not like he's gone too far that way, right?
Yeah.
It's not like
Yeah.
Saw, where it's like Saw is all in on we will do whatever we need to do to take down the Empire, to fight the Empire. It doesn't feel like Luthen has gone quite that far yet. But I don't know. It's hard to say because it's still so early in the series, relatively speaking. So it's like there are so many things that could happen. And I'm just not one to buy the wedge being driven between them quite yet.
I don't think it's going to happen even this season at all. I think it's probably like next season we'll see it progress and maybe come to a head because, you know, we don't know what happens to him ultimately. But we know the Mon Mothma and Andor at least survive, you know, up to Rogue One.
He might not even... Oh, it's just so hard to say. Because I guess realistically, Luthen is... Is Luthen helping Mon Mothma finance this at all? Or is it the other way around?
It's so hard to say. It's hard to know exactly what their relationship is. Like, it definitely seems like Mon Mothma was able to secure a bunch of funding, at least initially. And then all this trouble that she's had, you know, with more oversight, basically. She hasn't been able to move the money like she needs to. And that's what she was trying to do in this episode with the banker guy.
Right.
It's like, hey, if I can get this new foundation up and running and have you at the chair of it, we can use it to funnel the money where we can access it. And Luthen was like, she was funneling the money to him and he was using it to actually build the network, make the stuff happen. And then maybe she's been like frozen out of it for a little while. And so he's like, I got to get the money some other way. And then I can also use it as this push to, you know, push the Empire into doing what they need to do and also get us a bunch of money.
Right.
So it's really hard to say exactly what the relationship is, how far it goes back, that kind of stuff. Because we don't know very much at all beyond what we've been shown. No. But she definitely wasn't aware of any of the stuff that was going on.
This is one of those episodes. Granted, you know, we're halfway through the season now. This
a little
episode,
over halfway, yeah.
This episode only just raised more questions than it answered. Like, I'm thinking back on it now, and it's like, well, okay, there is still the nature of Vel and Luthen's relationship. Like, what exactly is that? Because my understanding, I gotta stop saying vibe too. My understanding is that Vel is like, just Luthen's is like an agent, basically. I think she was, the thing that I don't fully understand is it seemed like she seemed Aldani, but also maybe she's just that good at acting, playing the part. Right? That also kind of makes me wonder, it's like, was she ever going to go back for Cinta then? Because
I do wonder what's happening with Cinta there, because if there weren't any cutbacks going back to there, I could have thought we were just done with that part of the story. Right. But then there's just those like 2 or maybe 3 quick scenes of her, you know, with the Imperial Star Destroyer overhead, and then her like on the speeder like scooter thing, whatever it was, going away. It's like, so there's definitely still more going on there that we're gonna, you know, follow up on. It's going to be in a massacre.
I was going to say, like, it's probably not going to be good, because I think this is where we're going to see, this is where we see Luthen's Imperial oppression that he wanted. This is it.
We're going to see an atrocity that is going to galvanize some people, and so yeah, it's definitely lots of questions there.
That Star Destroyer definitely made my legs weak too, with how big it is. I'm just like, I cannot imagine seeing that. It's
seeing
far
it in
too
atmosphere
large.
is like, oh no,
yeah.
that's not a good
Always
thing.
Bad news. Always bad news.
See some what is it? Emperor's Hammer from enemy lines.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
Orbital bombardment stuff.
It's not. I don't know. I'm left with just so many questions. Cassian definitely kind of felt like the backseat in this episode. He, of course, had.
I mean, as far as he's concerned, he was done. So,
yeah.
He's like, I did the job. Let's let it go.
Marva, his mom, that was an interesting turn. Where, because I was like, that just left me questioning so many aspects of their relationship. Not in a bad way, not in a kind of like, not questioning their love for each other, but it's just like, oh, I don't know. Just like, obviously, yeah, you took this child because you thought that's what was best, and it sounds like that is what was best, because it sounds like she knows something about what happened on Kalani that...
It definitely feels that way.
Kalani? Is that it?
Kanari.
Kalani's the freaking droid, isn't it? The, like, tactical droid. But,
yeah.
Kanari. It sounds like she knows something. She knows when she tells Cassian, like, stop looking for your sister. I don't know if that means that... This is what I mean. It's just more questions. It's like, does she actually know something? Does she's like, I saw all the dead kids on the way in or whatever? Or is it...
Maybe she checked up on the planet later, whenever... Because to me, the way it plays out when we see the flashbacks is that they took him assuming that he was just there by himself. And maybe once they were able to communicate with him properly, they realized that there were other kids there. Maybe they went back and there was nobody left.
Yeah.
Either just not there or, bodies, however you want to look at it. It's like, could be either way. And it, making the assumption like, yeah, there's nothing to find, or it could be that she's just assuming, hey, there was nobody else there when we were there. We know.
And it could very well have just been like, this has been a harmless thing for him for the most part, or just not having the heart to tell him that she's not out there.
And maybe she didn't realize how far it was pushing him to take risks.
It's the impetus of the whole thing, the whole series. Him getting to this point is because he's looking.
That's
for her.
The inciting incident.
Yeah, and she'd be, I think, ignorant at the least to not know that.
And the cruel irony of him doing this heist just to get this money, and then it being the thing that inspires her to stand up and not leave, and him like realizing it but not feeling like he can tell her about it. So,
this whole
he's like, look, it's like these heroes, they did this thing, and he's like both like, oh, I'm a hero, but also like, no, I'm not.
No, I'm not.
I know what I was really there for, and I didn't do anything heroic.
I know, and I mean, it's like it's becoming clear. There were like 2 people there. 3. Assuming that Cinta is Aldani, you could say that only 3 of them were doing it for like altruistic reasons. And this is altruistic, meaning like Vel's doing it, I think, because it's possible too that Luthen was somehow connected with her and then got her off world to like debrief or something. Like she doesn't necessarily have to be from there, but she also could be from there. There's a lot of reasons that she could be involved. But it's just like, obviously Nemec, Terriman, and then maybe Cinta. I'm assuming Cinta.
And Gorn.
Gorn too. Sorry, I was thinking of just the rebels, not the he's a rebel. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's like Skeen not there for any good reason. Cassian just there for money, and Vel her allegiance is she's there to incite the Empire. But I mean, I feel like there's something very different between getting involved on the level that she was involved in, and then, kind of not understanding the consequences of what was going to happen. Because I get the feeling that they were not told the Empire is going to crack down on this planet. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that was part of their briefing. And then...
they thought it was just to steal the money for the rebellion.
Yes.
They didn't know that Luthen's bigger plan was really just, like, to shake things up, basically.
Yeah.
And it definitely could come down very, very hard.
But I think my feelings on Vel are kind of dependent on, like, how does she feel about that? Is she from Aldani and it was like, oh, this is a hard thing to do, but it's like it is for the best? I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like there's a certain level of kind of ignorance that I need for her to have before I can just like fully
Get behind her on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Because it's a very different thing, but also a very kind of covert ops, Cold War way of fighting to have an instigator. You know what I mean? To have a plant.
Mhm.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
Like it's
My feeling on it is she's probably not Aldani. She's probably
I agree.
was it when part of Luthen's rebel cell, whatever. Like she was put there, and the team was assembled around her,
Yeah.
basically. And then her and Cinta got involved, and that's her deeper connection to it is her and Cinta ended up having a relationship, and Cinta probably is native.
So that's going to be something. I mean, I think that might be the one predictable thing about this show is that Vel finds out what's happening and it's like, oh my God, Cinta is still there, and then kind of maybe does something rash to go back and try to get her out.
Yeah, and I've also seen some speculation that Clea gives Vel, meets with Vel and gives her the orders to kill Cassian. It's like, was she doing that on Luthen's order, or was she taking that upon herself? Because she like kind of questions Luthen a little bit.
She does. I don't trust her. I don't trust her. I don't necessarily think that she is. I don't think she's a turncoat necessarily. I don't think she's a snitch. But I don't trust her. I don't know. Luthen, because Luthen, the way he has talked, and it could just be to kind of sell Cassian. I don't know. Luthen feels committed. Luthen feels committed in a way that Clea did not seem that way. It did not seem to me. And I'm still forming that opinion. I'm still forming that idea. But I think there's something...
we haven't really got... This is the episode we got the most from her, for sure. Before she's, just the assistant in the shop, giving someone Luthen to talk to that's, where he doesn't have to have his public face on.
Yeah.
And this episode, we get to see her do a little bit more. It's like, is she completely on the level? And it's possible they're answering to somebody else too. Like, he may not be the head of the organization, as it were.
Right.
Or, it's so hard to know. It's so hard to know how this is all structured.
It is. And that really makes me... Cole, this conversation is just leaving me with more questions.
I know.
This is not helping me. Mogo seems convinced that Luthen is going to die. I
mean, by the end of the show, I think so.
I don't know. He seems so bought in. Yeah, I don't see a way. He could conceivably operate as another rebel cell. Legends. There's plenty of, not that they need precedent, but there's plenty of precedent for someone just not joining the larger rebellion and fighting the Empire in their own way. But dramatically, it makes a lot more sense to just take him out. And if you look at the end of Rogue One, I get the idea that Gareth Edwards and then by extension Tony Gilroy don't like loose ends. so
yeah. My thought really is that Luthen, he's either already connected to Saw or is going to end up connected to Saw directly. And as the rebellion coalesces as it needs to, at first they're all going to be working together, and then as Saw and Luthen push for more extreme stuff, Mon Mothma's going to become way more uncomfortable with it, and maybe her and Cassian end up closer.
Yeah.
And Cassian realizes that, Saul needs to stop doing what he's doing, and so he decides to cut off his funding by killing Luthen.
Which
take out his patron, and that's the impetus for Saul going completely rogue from the rest of the rebellion.
Right, and
is detached and also doesn't have the kind of funding and such that he used to have.
Right, as well as having a significant amount of distaste for the larger rebellion. I don't know. Luthen, though, I could see Luthen having kind of a Kylo Ren moment in that he's like, okay, Mon Mothma, we need to push harder. We need to push harder. We need to do more. And then he gets wrapped up in Saw. Saw's getting him to do something he's not comfortable with, or he's like, this is too far, but doesn't feel like he can turn back because Mon Mothma is not doing what he needs. And he knows that it's like, this must be the only way forward. Or he just ends up being Saw Gerrera too, and is like, yeah, we have to do this. because I do think there's a level of him. He seems very confident, and he puts that forth when he's dealing with his operatives. But I do think there's a portion of him, if we look at him being nervous the night of the operation, there's a part of him that is not confident. That is not like Saw would be nervous, but I think Saw is more likely to be like nervous and lash out, whereas Luthen seemed kind of reserved and kind of pulled in on himself when he was nervous.
Yeah.
So,
all the little niggling doubts come to bite him the night before. After there's nothing he can do about it, but
yeah,
he's definitely like worrying, and that's the thing that makes me think that maybe wasn't in on the Cassian assassination order, because he feels like, despite what he said about Cassian being expendable, I think he does see something. He sees something in Cassian that's going to be nurtured. So I don't think he would order his execution, but you never know.
Because when he said he was expendable, he was talking to Vel, right? When that was when I didn't think he meant that at all. There was something in his delivery. I don't know. It was just the feeling I got was that he did not mean that Cassian was expendable. He was trying to sell Vel on it.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to look at who's being talked to, and again, you're having to just interpret and assume what the relationships are between all these different people, because we don't know any of them. We're having to learn about them as we go. It's like, and as more information comes to light, it's like, oh, maybe he did mean it, or maybe he didn't mean it. I don't know. Mogo was asking about Rebels and what the continuity is here. Rebels starts the same year as Andor is taking place right now, but without a month-to-month notice of like when the events happen. It's hard to say. They do occur concurrently. Like the 5 years that Andor the show is going to take place on, or the same 5 years that Rebels takes place over. And there's definitely a reference whenever they talk about the when Dedra's talking about all the different events that happened, like these different Rebel events that have happened that may be connected. She mentions something on Kessel, which could mean Solo, but that's several years in the past. That could be talking about the very first episode of Rebels where they rescue the Wookiees.
Yep.
So it's hard to say at this point.
We didn't even talk about Dedra. How
she's the most competent one there.
That was Yularen.
Except for
Yularen,
maybe
right?
Yularen.
Yeah, okay.
Yes,
that was definitely Yularen. That was very cool. And I'm like, if it's not Yularen, it's one of those things that's like, all right, I appreciate that the show is not like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Easter egg all the time. But if it's not Yularen, I'm gonna pitch a fit. I'm gonna be really mad if it's another old man with white hair in the ISB that is not Yularen.
Yeah, he was credited as Yularen.
Okay,
for sure.
Okay.
So
that was good. That whole sequence was good, and it's hard because this freaking show, man. I'm getting worked up now. I'm getting worked up because who am I supposed to be rooting for? Cyril Karn? This guy sucks. This sucks. He's a cop. He's the worst kind of cop because he thinks he's doing the right thing. He sucks. And yet,
he's incredibly compelling as a character.
He's incredibly compelling as a character. I want him to succeed. And then you've got Dedra, who is literally space fascist. The worst part of the space fascists. You know what I mean? She is the KGB of the Empire.
But again, she's incredibly compelling.
She's incredibly compelling.
You're rooting for her because she's competent and she's getting stuff done. And all the rest of them are like holding her back in some ways.
What's the guy who's her rival? What's his name? Blevin? Blevin. Yeah. Whenever he's just like, we need to rein her in. It's like, and then Partagaz is just
he's got a very punchable face.
He does.
He's very smug, Yeah.
And then Partagaz is just like, interesting. Dedra, can you back this up? And she's like, yeah.
I love that she's like, are you willing to have your reputation ventilated in public? Such a good line.
He is another very, very, very interesting character to me. Like, obviously, just a bad dude, right? He's just a bad dude.
He's a bad dude, but he's a great Imperial. He's so good.
He is. Whenever he talks, it's like, Dedra, walk with me for a minute. Watch your back. It's like,
he is so concise in what he says. And like, I love it was the previous episode whenever the two of them have their first like having it out thing. He has them both come to his office. Like he walks in, like the second he enters his room, he's like, speak.
Yep.
Just go. I don't have time to waste. Just tell me what's going on.
Mogo just wanted to
So
point
good.
out the gritty spy stuff happening at the same time as Filoni's silly cartoon antics, and I'm like, yeah, these things are at least in name happening at the same time. Different audiences. That's all it is. But no, the ISB stuff is awesome because I'm a sucker for when someone breaks the rules and gets away with it. You know, it's like it ties into the Sith Academy stuff in Path of Destruction, right? Where it's like you cannot openly kill other apprentices.
But if you can do it secretly and get away with it,
more power to you. Whereas
that's
it's
a
just
good
like,
thing.
you know, Dedra goes and asks for this report and like outside of official channels and gets away with it because she did something that's so incredibly smart.
The rules just got changed. They're like, hey, y'all are getting more power now. And she's like, gonna use it immediately.
Yeah. Oh man, I can't wait for Wednesday. This week's episode, was all the star, none of the war.
And also we get our Space Florida bit at the end.
We do. The tease with the you see the K2 unit walking up the stairs so slowly. And I'm just like, no, they wouldn't, right? They wouldn't. They lied to us. And then nope, different one.
Holding a couple of bodies. And the guy's like, hang on to this one while we sort out the rest of them. He's like, hang. He's like, wait, no, that's not what he meant.
In my head, I know it's weird to headcanon real life stuff,
literal.
but in my head, they had Alan Tudyk come in and do that voice and just pitched it
It's
way
not.
down. I know.
It's not. Yeah.
I know, but in my head it
But
was.
there is a fun voice cameo in there, though. I don't know if you knew.
No.
The shore trooper that roughs him up there, Sam Witwer.
Not shocking.
Yeah.
Man of many talents, that guy. When I saw the sword trooper, I was just like, "Oh, you gotta be kidding me!" But in, like the best, like good-natured way possible. I was like, come on."
Are you a part of it?
That was really just honestly just frustrating. Like it was supposed to be, but it was, and then it's like, where's he gonna end up? It's like, oh, it's a shame. 6 years, the rule just got changed, the law just got changed, and it's like we saw the law get changed. Now Cassian's in jail for 6 years. I mean, obviously not.
Obviously not, but yeah, it's funny. He like pulled off this crazy rebel heist that instigated all this stuff to happen, and then he just gets arrested for no reason, basically, entirely. You know, he's guilty, just not of what you were pulling him over for.
Right. I do want to take a second.
It's like arresting the mob guys for tax evasion.
Well, that's what they have to do.
Yeah.
I don't want to, unless you have something else about this episode. There's one thing I want to acknowledge before we move on, because it is this episode's getting long in the tooth.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I want to point out to that friend of the show, Tom, on his bingo card for Andor that he made does have Cassian Andor shower scene, and this episode did give us that, and I do have to give him credit for that. That said, I do believe this ends the portion of the show that is in the Skyhoppers feed. Listen to another episode if you want to find out more about that podcast, my day job podcast. Cole's, I guess this is your day. It's weird. Your day job podcast is this one, I guess, because this is the one you have her on first. It doesn't matter. Anyway,
I'm Moonlight as a Skyhopper.
Yeah. I guess I don't I don't know. Doesn't matter. Now, that said, I have a random article for this week, if you will receive it. This article is entitled Lynik? L-Y-N-I-K. The Lynik was a species... I'm going to say Lynik. I think that's a more Star Wars pronunciation. The Lynik was a species of vicious predators. They had the ability to predict their prey's moves once they had tasted its blood, which is odd. They were purple with yellow stripes. On Toydaria, they were raised for combat and pitted against each other in brutal cage fights. Mogo, this one's for you. It appears twice. Once in MedStar 1, Battle Surgeons, mentioned only. I have no recollection. So I'm going to assume it was a very
Passing
brief,
reference.
very brief passing reference. The other appearance is in the novel Death Troopers by Joe Schreiber, and they actually appear, I think.
It seems like it, yeah.
It seems like it. So, congrats, Mogo. We talked about Death Troopers on this podcast. Not a lot to talk about there, obviously, but that is the nature of the random article. Sometimes there's something there. Sometimes there's not.
I'm trying to remember what context it could have appeared in Battle Surgeons being mentioned.
I imagine it was probably, it was someone that's like, oh, the fighting, it's like a bunch of Linux down there. You know, like...
I could have seen it being, what's his face, the reporter guy maybe talking about
Dender,
fights that were going on or something.
We love Dender. We love Dender.
Or our favorite commander of the base from the first book. I can't remember his name now.
Blade.
Blade, yeah.
Hate that
I feel like
guy.
that's something he would have talked about.
Hate that guy. What? Just the worst. Anyway, Cole has officially, if you're watching the stream, you can see that Cole has turned to the side.
I have shifted.
And that means that it is time, finally, for our
Path
book
of
coverage.
Destruction?
Yes. Path of Destruction.
We still haven't received the Darth yet, though they have talked about it.
We have not. We did talk about it. Was this our first Revan reference, or was that last time?
I think it got mentioned before whenever the Republic guys were talking about the history.
Okay.
But
So
definitely
maybe
talked about it a little bit more here.
Okay.
But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I don't even know if I wrote it down, honestly, because it wasn't super important.
It's important to me.
Yeah. There was another Sith reference, too. I have to try to remember to mention that, too.
Cool.
Nagasato.
Yes.
Or Nagasato, however you say it.
I've always said Nagasato, and I believe that is the... If you're looking at the Tales of the Jedi audio adaptations, I believe that is
That's how they say it.
Canonical pronunciation. Love that guy. Cool dude. Did a lot of good stuff.
Cool dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Definitely didn't just collapse a double star system to enable his own escape from Republic forces.
Yeah, as one does. As one does.
You gotta do what you gotta do, man. Luthen would do the same thing.
Don't you want to fight these bastards for real?
For real. I just love the way he talks. Everything about this guy.
All
right.
Man.
I'm going to try to interject as little as possible because we are... Whew.
It shouldn't be that bad. This is like a slightly shorter reading, and there's quite a bit of like action, like, saber duel stuff, so...
Which
that should be quick.
Was very good to read.
This is good to read.
I loved reading it.
But I'm not going to sit here and describe all the fighting.
No. Anyway, Cole, chapter 13 of Path of Destruction by Drew Karpyshyn.
Yep, chapter 13. Bane, he's on the down and outs right now.
Real quick, actually, I'm sorry, I need to interject already. I've got an ongoing joke with a friend. I think I've talked about it before. Who, every time I see him, he lives in Arizona. I really only see him like for Gen Con. I do not see him often at all. Every time he comes up, he's like, Ben, I got to talk to you about something. And I'm like, he's going to ask me about the rule of two. He's going to ask me about the rule of two again. Every time he's like, what's the deal with the rule of two? Rule of two doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense. And at this point, it's a bit because I've explained it to him. It's like, it does make sense. Like, read it. So he just texted me. It was his yearly text of the screenshot of the message he sent me once while I was in the bathroom at Gen Con. He just texted me the fake quote from the maker himself, George Lucas, who was quoted as saying, Darth Bane is big stupid. He just texted me that today out of nowhere, as he does. And I was like, dude, I'm literally reading this book for one of the podcasts right now. Darth Bane is, honestly, if you ask me, one of the only characters in this book who's not big stupid. Like, I think pretty much everyone else in this book is big stupid, except for him.
Him and Groshik,
Kasim, and,
yeah,
I guess Githany. She seems pretty on the level. Definitely not big stupid. Not my favorite character.
Stupid.
Not big
I wouldn't
stupid.
go that far.
Lord Khan is big stupid.
Lord
Absolutely.
Khan, what's the other Twi'lek?
Cordis.
Yeah.
Or,
no.
Copex. Yeah.
Yeah. He's pretty cool. He definitely seems like he's got a better head on his shoulders, at least, than Khan.
Khan has got his head so far up his own, you know what. But whatever, it's fine.
Mm.
I'm speaking with foreknowledge. I apologize. But even then, Bane spent half this section asking about that. It's like, is this the right way to do it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's almost like he'll take those doubts and do something with them.
Yeah, you never know. He might put some action to that.
Yeah, maybe like a rule or something.
Mm.
How many times are we gonna make that joke? Do you think?
Too many times.
It's
too
already been too
many times.
Anyway,
But
chapter 13.
Right now, Bane's not in a good place to do that kind of stuff because he's in a funk, and now it's becoming public knowledge. The vultures are starting to circle, realizing that he's not what he used to be, and so he's realizing that it's not going to go well for him. So he's got to make a stand. He's got to try to stand up for himself and like reclaim his power. And so at the next training session, the dual circle forms, and he just immediately calls out Sirac. Like, I challenge you, and he's really like hoping against hope that in the moment it'll come back to him and he won't get his butt kicked. And
not a bad idea, honestly. Just kind of one of those, he knows he's instinctively grabbed the Force in the past. If he has to do that here. This was kind of a big stupid move, honestly.
It was a big stupid move, but again, like you said, it's like he didn't have a lot of options.
No.
So maybe, and it does end up being the impetus for him rebuilding himself.
Yes.
But to be rebuilt,
Literally.
he must first be broken.
Be broken.
And so
Yeah.
he is utterly destroyed. I mean, at first Sirac is like taking his sweet time with it. He like manages, a couple of good passes, not taking any hits, but then Sirac just absolutely mops the floor with him breaking multiple bones, smashing his face. And Sirac, we should note, he's a Zabrak and he uses a double-bladed lightsaber or double-bladed saber in this instance, which something that Kazim also does. So, but he's one of the few students that actually utilizes that, and we'll get some more talk about that later.
It was really
as
good.
we get to it.
Because we're nerds, it was really good.
Indeed. So, Bane, utterly, completely destroyed, but not killed. They don't let him kill him. But he's badly wounded, completely and utterly humiliated and destroyed. So, not great. And then we check in on Rusan. It's become a war-torn battleground. It's not a good place to be right now. Multiple space battles and like debris from the space battle started crashing into the planet. And now there's, an army of Jedi and an army of Sith fighting all the time. And that's bad for everybody.
Sounds pretty
that lives
bad.
there.
Sounds pretty bad.
Yeah. Even though the army of light outnumbers the Sith like 2-1, we're told. Which is kind of wild.
Well, it's not, but it's not everything. It's not everything.
No. It's not everything for either one of them, though. It's like, there's even more Jedi, apparently.
Yeah. Well, too, the Sith, I don't know. I'd be curious to know if there were Sith still out there that were not a part of the Brotherhood of Darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I'm sure there were some rogues. But I'm sure many of them are being hunted down. Because it's all about unity now.
Big stupid, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I guess not inherently a terrible idea, but just not the way the dark side works.
No, but as we get to it, Bane's realizing the folly of it as well.
Yeah. So Rusan, bad
the Jedi.
place.
Yeah, the Jedi, they outnumber the Sith pretty badly, but Khan is like, hey, they've overextended themselves because they're also trying to like help protect the local populace because it's not a like super populated planet, but there are some villages and stuff. So they've kind of overextended themselves, protecting them because that's what Jedi do. They're compassionate, and the Sith are like, we will exploit this.
Yeah. Pretty
But
classic.
Kovac's like, it's like, dude, this is a bad idea. Unless we know exactly where their forces aren't concentrated, we'll get our butts kicked. And he's like, but we have an inside source. And on cue, in walks Githany, our now ex-Jedi, who's absurdly beautiful, apparently.
Yeah, I would say, like, mega hot.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Like, everyone's, like, lusting, classic, cartoon, tongues hanging out, eyes bugging out, whatever.
Yeah, they're Sith. They're allowed to do that.
Mm-hmm. She walks in. She's abandoned the Jedi, apparently, though they don't know that yet. And she's got inside information, knowing exactly where they can strike. So that's the plan. And then we go back to Bane. He's recovering in a bacta tank as he needs to do. And he's almost like regretful that they didn't just kill him because of how broken he is and how he knows that his life is basically over as a Sith. He's still useful in some fashion, but he'll never be what he once was, or so he thinks.
Well, and honestly, it's weird because it's like obviously bad dude, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's our protagonist. I can't help but feel bad for him.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't help but feel sorry for the guy because, you know, of all the Sith, he doesn't seem like the worst one.
Yet.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Like, yeah, it's like he doesn't seem that bad compared to some of the others, but we're kind of dealing with like he just doesn't look as bad because the rest looks so
the devil,
bad.
you know.
Yeah, he's not a good dude.
No, but none of the characters we know in this book have been good dudes, except for maybe Groshik.
Definitely Groshik. Definitely Groshik.
He's a good dude, very pragmatic, you know. Is what it is.
Yeah.
But everyone else, yeah, kind of bad. Even the Republic guys we met were not good.
Yeah.
Maybe the like Republic commander guy, he seemed like okay, but his underlings were not great.
No, it's just hard to say. Yeah, I think. I don't know. I don't know what I think. Anyway, we don't need to debate this anymore. They're Sith. They're not good dudes.
They're not Sith, but they are the protagonists, so we got to kind of root for them.
Yes.
Just like the ISB guys, you know. They're
right.
They're some of the main characters in the show, and you kind of have to root for them.
What are we supposed to do?
You could root for them without endorsing their views.
Exactly. I just learned something about Githany.
Oh no.
No, I mean, I know her where her story ends up going, obviously, but remember how we've talked about how we're gonna have to talk about some external media when we wrap this one up?
Yeah.
I didn't realize she was part of that.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
So, do we have art of her?
Yes, there, and it's actually
cool.
not from that. There is art from her from that. I don't know. I honestly just look forward to digging into all of that stuff. But that's for later.
Cool.
That's for later.
That's for later. That comes later. Chapter 14. So it took 3 weeks of bacta treatment to get Bane back up to, you know, normal standards, which is pretty crazy. He was really, really beat up.
Which is crazy. I mean, when you think about it, it's just like, oh, 3 weeks, that's so long. And it's just like, any other person would have died in real life would have died from their wounds. You know, like the fact that it only took him 3 weeks to heal pretty much completely. All right, not too bad.
Good old bacta, right?
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, and in that time, the Sith were victorious on Ruusan. I mean, the Jedi weren't completely wiped out, but they did have a massive victory. And, you know, at the Academy, everyone's morale is super high. Like, yeah, we had a massive victory, and the rumors are, you know, oh, Lord Hoth was killed and the Jedi were wiped out. But, you know, that's not really true, but they're like, it's good for morale, so who cares?
Can't hurt anything.
Whatever. And coming in as a triumphant hero of all that is Githany, their newest student, riding high on that victory she was able to win for them.
Mm-hmm.
So she's the new hotness at the Academy in every way that matters.
I was gonna say, in more ways than one.
Yep. She's become the new, you know, prize pupil that all the masters are fawning over because she's really strong in the Force as well. She's got a lot of talent, and she's like naturally dark side leaning. She's very ambitious and, you know, vain and all this stuff.
I mean, not to dig into something else too deeply, I get like more Slytherin vibes from her than most normal Sith. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Yeah. She's interesting, for sure.
Yeah. She is interesting. But Bane, of course, he wasn't there for all the celebrations because he was still getting healed up, and he hasn't really met her or anything because he's just seen her off in the distance, whatever. Because he is now almost like excommunicado. He can like participate in group sessions, but none of the masters will train him at all. And he's basically gone back to his roots of just spending all his time in the library studying the old texts. Which, you know, maybe that was the right thing to do to begin with, but his soul-crushing defeat has sent him back to the library.
He's one of us.
He's one of us now.
He's one of us, and Cole, I think it's gonna pay off for him. Can I
Yeah,
say
you think
that?
so?
I think it's gonna pay off, and it's. I mean, I don't even think that's too much of a spoiler. He's literally talking about it later in this, later in
for
this
sure.
reading.
Yeah, and I believe this is where the Negasado reference comes in, where he's reading a text by him or about him,
Yeah,
and some of the stuff they accomplished. And then also the next book he picks up is by Revan, talking about some of the stuff that happened there. So, getting our references in there.
yeah,
But who comes a calling to the library but Githany? Because she's seeking him out because she's, wanting to be the top student. So she needs to take out Sirac. And so she's like, well, you look for the insight into how to defeat him from the guy that he just beat to a pulp. So she seeks him out, and as soon as she sees him and kind of takes her measure of him, it's like, he might even be more useful than I originally thought. Might be able to use him as an instrument of Sirac's destruction.
yeah.
So she makes her move, pulling the fools like seductress, whatever you want to say on it. And Bane is not immune to such seduction, but he's also smarter than you would think. So
Right.
he's not just all brawn. He's got a lot of brain to him.
His interactions with Githany, I think, are really interesting, and in a lot of ways shed a lot of light on how nuanced of a character he is. As we see that a little more going forward. Obviously not as much right now, but there's just a lot more to him than you would expect for like future Sith Lord. I think it's very cool. It's very interesting to read all of this.
For sure. So they talk a bit, and kind of he goes into what happened with him after he killed the other student, and had a realization that he killed his father too, and didn't realize it at the time. That kind of like stuck him, made him realize like, maybe this is not the path I want to be walking on, and it kind of just killed his anger and his rage, and that's like just made him completely impotent as a dark side user. So that's the path he's been sent on, and she has had some experience with like cutting herself off from the Force, like unintentionally, and she's able to like use the Force to like rekindle that, or at least like reach past his barriers and find his anger again, and feels it, and like he feels it too, and he's like, oh, it's still there. And that's like kind of gives him this little spark of hope that it's still there. Even though that he can't reach it himself, it is in there. And she's like, hey, I can totally teach you. I'll like start relaying the teaching that we're all getting, and also teach you stuff that I learned as a Jedi, because she was raised in the Jedi Temple, obviously, raised as a Jedi with another Padawan. So that's the plan. She's gonna start relaying all that stuff for him, and he's gonna keep reading the library, because that's the only thing he can do on his own, really. And he's starting his comeback tour.
His comeback tour.
He's starting to bring it back. He's got a little bit of hope, a little bit, and maybe there's a chance. Maybe there's a chance. Who knows?
Maybe
in this book about Darth Bane, maybe he will come back.
I doubt it. I just don't see it.
But internally, Githany, she's really just like, I'm just using this guy. He's just a means to an end. She doesn't really care. It's all just, part of the plan. She's only going to be teaching him enough to like keep him just behind her, so that if he ever becomes a problem, she can deal with him. Which is the way that'll come back to bite her, right?
I was going to say, it's just so funny that it's just like, even just with not even knowing where this goes and how this ends up and who Bane is, it's pretty clear to see this, like, he's not just gonna look at this as altruism, like I don't.
Yeah, she totally underestimates him.
Yeah, she does, absolutely. And it's there's something cool about that the whole power fantasy thing, right? That Bane is just like this unstoppable force. That it's like there's a line between that and just completely overpowered, like, self-insert character who never does anything wrong. I feel like Drew Karpyshyn walks the line really well between it's like Bane is a believable, valuable protagonist, but at the same time, it's like we get his internal struggles, and we see that he does struggle with things. But then we get the people talking to him. Githany, you know, talking to him, being like, oh, I've got him wrapped around my finger. And it's like, we didn't get too much inside of Bane's head for this, did we?
Nope. And then the next little bit, we're like,
So I wonder if that was intentional, that we didn't see the inside Bane's thought process too much.
Yeah, that was all her point of view. It's like, yeah, I've got him perfectly where I want him. And then, lo and behold, that night, he sneaks out of his room after curfew, because they're not allowed to roam the halls at night, and goes and visits Blade Master Kazim.
Yeah.
And asks him, it's like, hey, teach me in secret, because I've managed to, I've gotten past my block here. I've refound my rage, my anger, my source of the dark side. I'm not afraid of it anymore, so I can finally start bringing this back. And his reasoning for wanting Kazim to do it for like his own reasons is like, hey, this can be your victory against Cordis, because Cordis has like written me off, throwing me under the bus. But if you're the one that brings me back, and it'll be your victory. And Sith are all about their own personal glory.
They're all
despite
about
what the
their own
Brotherhood of
personal
Darkness stands for.
Right.
They're still all very self-serving. And so Kazim was like, okay, sure, we'll start doing that. We'll start training during the night. So now Bane's got two teachers. He's got Githany with his studies, Kazim with the lightsaber training, and then he's got his own studies of the ancient texts. So he's getting even more than everyone else is getting.
I was going to say, he's getting more than anyone else is getting. And what I think is really interesting is that the Sith have not removed those texts. But I think that speaks something to like their pride, right? Khan is like, this is the only way. No one's going to disagree with this because it is the best way. And it's like, so there's no reason to go through the library and take all that stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and you know, this is one of those things, you know, don't destroy something that might be useful.
Sure, that too. But
yeah, it definitely is. We'll see more of that coming up later on.
Yeah, I think so.
Right now, like, most of them don't even go in there at all. So it's just like, it's whatever. It's just old records, basically.
Doesn't
Who
matter.
cares? Doesn't matter a bit. Chapter 15. So Bane's studies are paying off. It's been a few weeks of that. He's already like starting to make some strides, make some improvements. And between all three of these different teaching sessions that none of them are, and Githany doesn't know about Kazim doesn't know about Githany. His own studies in the library, everyone's kind of like, whatever.
Whatever,
Who cares
he can do
about
whatever
that?
he wants. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
So no one's really aware of how much he's doing. And that's going to be important as we go forward. And after a sparring match with the Twilight Blade Master, he starts inquiring about the Darth, or the double-bladed lightsaber, like the whole technique. Because he's like, hey, is it better? And Kazim's like, no, but
yes. Where it's like this weird, it was all very mind gamey, right? Where it's like your opponent it's actually less direct, less effective, but your opponent is like too caught up in making sure they get too caught. Because the interesting thing that I remember him pointing out from the first time I read this is like, well, if they're dealing with the first half with one side of the blade, they should know where the other half is. It is,
they're
off of
directly connected to each other. You can't deal with one without knowing where the other one is intuitively. But in your head, you're like, there's two blades.
There's two blades, so you get this.
So
like,
there's
weird,
twice as many things to deal with.
And it's like
even if it's not true,
you get this weird psychological advantage sometimes, and it's like half of an advantage. I don't know. Kazim is very. It's very kind of stereotypical master student relationship, right? In that he doesn't give a straight answer. And I think Bane even kind of like chew on it for a while. Yeah, he's chewing on it.
Yeah, he's thinking about it, and he's like, because Kazim doesn't tell him everything, obviously, and that's something that comes up later. It's like, hey, I've taught you everything you know, but I haven't taught you everything I know.
I'm not stupid.
I'm not stupid.
No, and I think that Mogo brings up the great point of like the double-bladed lightsaber beating Qui-Gon. It's like, yeah, it is a matter of intimidation, and just the fact that when was the last time a Jedi saw a double-bladed lightsaber? It's not a Jedi weapon. You know, I understand why video games let you do it because it's cool, right? But it's a weapon that is focused explicitly on attack. Whereas the lightsaber itself is like, yeah, it can attack, but it's used primarily as a defensive weapon, and that's not what a saber staff does. I guess a saber staff and a double-bladed lightsaber are not quite the same thing. I don't think, depending on who you
It's
ask.
one of those things like it's like a square and a rectangle are not the same thing, but one is the other, but not the other way.
Yes, I know what you mean. That's funny. But yeah, Bane chews on it, and I won't lie, I chewed on it a little bit too. I'm like, huh. Thinking
It's one of those things that makes sense, and the main point Kazim makes like, hey, most people don't use one of these, and so most people don't have experience fighting them, and so just having it is intimidating. It's like it makes you like overestimate your opponent, and they don't know everything you can do with it, and so they're automatically assuming it's better in some way.
That's what the weird advantage is, right? Where it's like it's not, there's no
practical it's more
advantage.
Of a psychological advantage than an actual physical advantage.
Yep. But I mean, we've already talked about like the force shields, right? And how much concentration is required in a lightsaber duel with another force user, because you have to have that force shield up all the time. You have to be thinking about that, but also anticipating what your opponent's doing. And if you add just one more wrinkle, one tiny advantage, if you're not worse off for using the saber staff, I mean, you might as well. You know?
Yeah, and this is where we also find out that Githany uses a light whip.
Light whip.
Which is very unusual. And Bane's like, yeah, it's like another step. And Kazim's like, yeah, it's like, that gives you even less options as a fighting weapon, but it's even more rare. And so it's even more like of a psychological advantage, potentially.
Right.
So, you know, it's a interesting like chess match.
Yeah, then we
mind.
Get, I think the only other person that I know of that uses a light whip is Silri. Do you know Silri?
Don't think so.
She's a character from the Empire at War Forces of Corruption expansion. She's a Night Sister.
Okay.
And as far as I know, I'm sure there are other.
There's a couple of them I know of. Lumaya.
I was gonna say, yeah. There's another one I know of. There's another one.
The big one, probably.
Yep.
And then there's I don't remember the specifics. I mainly just remember like the cover art. But one of the Jedi Apprentice novels, there's some bounty hunter, I think, that uses a light whip. I remember the cover art of the light whip on there. So I remember that being in there. I don't remember the character. I don't remember much of anything beyond. It's been a very long time since I read that
too.
I feel like they're like on a speeder bike, and they have like the light whip out or something.
Yeah,
I've got all my books over there.
It's in multiple Jedi Apprentice, 3 Jedi Apprentice books, 3 Jedi Quest books.
Interesting.
I'll see if I can do a little more research.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's at least one cover that's got it featured on there, and that's why it's in my brain. Yeah, so a little bit of lightsaber insight, which is fun. Getting some insight from a master of the blade. And then we go to his training with Githany in the archives, and he's summoning a force lightning storm in the library, which is just going nuts. And it's like he's literally like been at this for like 1 hour, and he's already doing way more than any of the other students were able to do. It's like,
okay.
And Githany's like, crap, this guy. Like, and apparently this isn't even the first time that he's like taken something extremely quickly and just exceeded what the other students were able to do. It's like, oh my gosh, this guy's way more powerful than she'd ever thought. Really, it's like, did I overestimate my ability here?
The character you're looking for is Ona Nobis.
Okay.
Yeah. She is on the cover of a book on a speeder bike.
Oh, I was right.
With a light whip. Yeah.
My brain has not failed me.
Yeah. No. That was a really good. That's one of those kind of like interesting, just like power fantasy thing to read about Bane, where it's like Githany's like, oh god, I've screwed up. You know, like he is so far beyond me. This dude's out of control.
Yeah, and this is also where she starts having the inkling that maybe she's like kind of likes him in some way. she starts like doubting her plan to ultimately like betray him because she's like kind of maybe fancies him a little bit.
And
Like,
here's where that line that Drew Karpyshyn is walking, he starts to fall a little too far onto the other side, I think. Onto the Mike Stackpole
yes,
side
but
of
no.
it. Yes,
Yeah,
but no.
it's like because I think he wins it back later because of how
Right.
how vain and like self-serving she really is. Like she is real Sith material.
Yeah.
As far as it goes. So.
She is. Just a little on that walking crossing that line. Definitely not like Stackpole, who, you know, Cornhorn gets to like sleep with any woman he wants and throws on her. But, you know, it's like, all right, we get it, buddy. We love you, but we get it.
We get it, man.
She's slender. That's an old Rogue Podron joke.
It is an old Rogue Podron joke.
That is what I remember that from. But it's true. Every woman in those early books is described as slender.
Slender.
It's true. And anytime it comes up now, it's like Zahn sardonic. You know, it's just like, oh my god, this guy, please.
There's that word again.
Anyway, sorry, I said I wasn't gonna divert us, and I've done it.
Nah, it's fine. It's fine. So they're cleaning up after the Force storm got a little bit out of control, and then she finally like starts to get into her history a little bit because he had asked her earlier about why she left the Jedi, and she's like, I'm not ready to talk about that yet. So she kind of goes into it, find out that she was taken as a young child, just like most of the Jedi are at this point, and her master had another apprentice as well, and they ended up having a fling. And the master found out, and it's like, hey, you can't do that. No more. That's, you know, passion. That's bad. That's bad. And that was kind of her breaking point, realizing it's like, yeah, that's the Jedi way is not the right way. Passion is the real truth of the way we're supposed to live, whatever.
Which is interesting to me too, because she doesn't even necessarily strike me as evil. She's
not really.
She's got the ambition. It's like the dark side is a means to an end for her. Where it's like some people like Palpatine, to me, it's a means to an end. Also, he's incredibly evil. You know, it's like, but she is definitely just more of the means to an end. I want to live life the way I want it to. And that's what I'm most focused on.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's interesting in that way.
But, and now she's telling him all this, and he kind of like, he makes a joke about it, and she's not cool with it, but he's, you know, genuinely apologetic about it. He's like, hey, I was just, you know, making a joke, whatever. And she's like, again, finds herself being like, this guy, he can get under my skin in a way. It's like, it's not good.
Yep. That's another kind of interesting little bit with Bane that I like too. Just the fact that he apologized to somebody just feels very un-Sith-like, very atypical for a Sith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Kind of fun.
All right, chapter 16. Have another intense sparring session with Kazim, and Bane like holds his own for a long time this time, but still can't break through his defenses. And this is the point where he like he sees himself slowing down, so he's just like, nah, I'm done. I can't beat you. And Kazim's like, it's surrendering's not, you know, not very honorable. And Bane's like, honor. Who needs honor? And like quotes the Sith like text, and Kazim's like, oh. That's good insight, Bane, because he doesn't know the quote.
Cool. Yeah, I have read that.
Yeah.
No, and I think it's just all of these people, and I just feel like Drew Karpyshyn found the most compelling and believable way to make Bane seem like the smartest guy here. Right? Where it's not, he's just smarter than everybody for no discernible reason. He's smarter than everybody because he is using the resources that they all have access to and are just ignoring.
Yeah, they've chosen to ignore it. And
and it's like, well, I've got no sympathy for you.
He's diving into it. Like, he dove into it on his own initiative and initially, and then was kind of forced to do it more, and is coming to realize that it's way more important than even he originally thought.
In Bane, again, it's like, he doesn't say honor, that's for schmucks. In the sense that it's like, I will fight dirty, I will do whatever I need to win. It is just like, there's no point in fighting a battle that's lost. There's no point in wasting my effort when I could save it for another spar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Or
we could say
if it was a real duel, if I knew I couldn't win, it'd be better off to run.
to be exactly because it's
Live
just
to fight
it's
another day.
live to fight another day because otherwise it's all done. Can't do
Mhm.
anything. There's no. It's like an honorable death doesn't mean anything to anybody. It doesn't.
Mhm. Yep. And this is when I get into the conversation about the Darth title. He asked Kazim about it because he'd read some stuff but wasn't getting any like clear answers. And Kazim's like, yeah, Lord Khan kind of did away with it. Really felt like it was just inciting conflict amongst the Sith themselves because taking that title was like inviting challenge, basically.
And he's not wrong.
And
He's not wrong.
He's not wrong, but as you know, the more answers Kazim gives, the less satisfied Bane is with any of the answers, basically.
Yeah. They all just kind
And
of
then
stack
he
up
doesn't
in this really bad way.
But he doesn't say any of it out loud. He eventually is like, okay, yeah. And in his head, he's like, the Sith are like kind of doing the Jedi thing, and it's not good.
It's not gonna work.
The dark side is not flourishing with these Sith because they're trying to cooperate and build something together, and that's just not the way it's supposed to work.
Nope.
So he's realizing that this entire Brotherhood of Darkness thing is probably antithetical to how the Sith are supposed to work.
Which, of course, is something we've known. Which is, it's weird. Well, because I guess no matter what, at the end of the day, Palpatine took over the galaxy. And it's kind of a Thrawn thing, where that's like the thing he couldn't foresee is what got him in the end.
Mm-hmm.
But the Baneite Sith, as they come to be known, because we know what he does, I'm not spoiling anything, they're the ones that win. They win. It's not Big Stupid, Alex. You're not listening.
Surprise.
But it's not Big Stupid. That's how they win.
Mm-hmm.
And then Palpatine, screws the pooch, throws it all away. But it is kind of terrifying, too, to think about, okay, each apprentice is stronger than the last master, right? At least in theory.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing how powerful Bane is now, and it's just like 1,000 years of this. How powerful really is Palpatine? You know what I mean? It's just like,
yeah.
And you see him do some absolutely wild stuff. So we kind of know, but this is again not directly relevant. Apologies.
No, and it also makes me think of from Shadows of Mindor with Chronal and his philosophy on the dark side. His like whole thing is like the dark side is all about destruction, and as long as the Sith were bound on like destroying, they were winning basically. But as soon as they turn to building something, it starts falling apart. That philosophy like applies here in a way.
It does. And can I take a very brief second to say I love that not only is our own knowledge supplemental to this podcast and what we're reading, but we are able to build on things that we have read previously in the podcast.
Yeah.
It feels like this podcast is an extended like college course on Legends. Doesn't it, in that way that it's like it all kind of builds.
Refer back to our previous lesson.
Exactly. And it's just, I don't know. I just thought that was very cool how you were able to pull back, not just from something but from a book that we've read. And of course, that's happened a million times.
We already talked about this.
Yeah. We've done this before.
And that book was written after this one.
Yeah.
But it takes place way after this one.
Very much.
But yeah. Interesting parallels with the just dark side stuff. Yeah, so Bane's like, so Kazim and all these Brotherhood stuff, they're probably not kosher. This is not good. So that's in the back of his head now. And then when he's studying with Githny the next time, he's distracted about it because he's still like mulling over all that stuff. And she notices and asks him about it. And he confides like that maybe the Masters don't know everything. Maybe they're on the wrong foot about all this stuff. And she takes this moment to like be like, all right, this is the time to move forward with my plan to take out Sirac, claim the top spot and everything. And her intention is to maneuver him into assassinating Sirac outside of the dueling circle, not what ends up happening.
Yeah.
So she's like, I'm going to challenge him tomorrow, and intending to, maneuver him into that, but he's like, nah, I'll do it. And then reveals that he's been training with Kazim and getting stronger. And she's like, oh, okay, I see how it is. And he's like, yeah, I'm not stupid. I know. I knew that. I knew that if you were training me, you weren't going to be giving me everything. So I had to, fortify myself in any way I could. And again, she's like, this guy, he's got something going on.
And it's like, I'm far less confident in my ability to handle this situation.
Yeah, she's like, oh, I don't know that I could even take this guy out.
No. Even if I wanted to.
And also, I don't know if I want to anymore, because he's kind of cool.
I know. Their dynamic is interesting. It is. It's definitely, I oversimplified it earlier and kind of made some jokes, but it is interesting how these two interact and where you think it's going to end up.
He senses that she's like got some feelings for him or something, so he kisses her, and she's not, not into it.
Yeah.
Very Han Solo and Leia moment. Yeah, right. In a way.
Right. Or everything's above board. Don't worry. But yeah, the best way to describe it is not into it. That is like unfortunately the best way to do it. But yeah, it is all above board. Don't worry. It all seems fine.
And it's funny when he leaves and she's like, be careful, and then she's like even like cries a little bit and she's like, oh, so mad at herself.
This is bad.
She cares a little bit. She's like, I'm so weak. And I'm so stupid.
Can I say, between them, it looks like things are going a certain way. Again, just knowing about Bane, it looks like this might be going a certain direction.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
Yeah. It feels like, oh, okay, I see where this is.
I see.
The road's leading.
Yeah.
Yep. So, in the very end of this chapter is the next day, dueling circle time. It's raining, of course, because it's got to be as dramatic as possible.
Of course.
He steps into the circle and calls out Sirac. Let's go. And just immediately, chapter 17, it's the duel. And Bane, he lets it go on a while, deliberately,
it's so cool.
Deliberately not, attacking directly, just defending and just being, competent enough that Sirac doesn't think that he's better than him. But turns out Sirac's got his own little weakness in that all his duels are really short. He's never had to fight someone for an extended period of time, and so
good. It is so good. The fact that Bane is 5 seconds in, is I could have ended it, but I'm not. Yeah. I'm not going to. I saw my opening. I could have taken it. I
could have taken it, but I want to destroy this guy. I want to just completely, utterly wipe the floor with him. And
I felt the dark side flowing through me at that moment. I was like, yes, more of this.
So he lets Sirac wear himself out and then just strikes fast and hard and just breaks his arm and his leg just instantly. And the fight's just over.
Done.
So fast. And he even rears up to, to do the final strike, but hesitates. And Kazim is like, hey, stop the fight. You won. Don't kill him.
Yeah, he's still worth something to us.
He's still worth something to us. He's not going to take 3 weeks to heal like you did. Because it wasn't quite as brutal as that. But, he's satisfied with his victory and he leaves. And then Githany, follows him and is like, why didn't you kill him? That was the whole thing, is you were supposed to kill him. And he's like, Kazim stopped me. And even to himself, his protests are kind of sound half-hearted. Why didn't I kill him? I don't know why I didn't kill him.
But see, again, it's I read that not as Bane. It's kind of antithetical to what Kronall preaches way later. But I think it is Bane is I think it's because Bane sees a use for him. Bane is no, now is not the time.
Yeah.
And he knows, he's I can kill him whenever I want. I can kill him whenever I want now. It's over. He will never challenge me again. Or he might, but if he does, it's stupid. I just think Bane is a resource intelligence gatherer, whereas Githany is short-sighted, right away, get this guy out of my way. And Bane's
he was a threat, take him out.
Yep. And Bane's it's not time yet. It's not time.
Mm-hmm. Of course, Githany, she comes to the conclusion that Bane it doesn't have the ruthlessness to just kill somebody unless they're like actually a threat immediately. He feels like there needs to be a
Okay.
justification, is what his assumption is. And she's like, oh, we don't. I don't have that weakness. I could totally have just killed the dude. And so that this is her like moment. It's like, oh, okay, I like Bane, but also like he's kind of weak
He's
in a way.
soft.
Like
Yeah.
he sees this weakness in him. And she's like, okay, there's still room there to manipulate whatever. And she felt before maybe he could have just killed her at any point, but now she's like, he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. He didn't have the guts to just kill me outright.
I guess we'll see.
So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. And that night, Kazim comes and visits Bane in his quarters, and he brings him a gift: the lightsaber of his master, a curved hilt saber. And it's like, and he's like, "Hey, you've earned this. I felt like it was the time to pass it on to somebody that had earned it. So, now you got your own saber." And he's also like, "Oh, and Cordis wants to see you first thing in the morning. So, good luck with that." But Bane is very thrilled to have a lightsaber, and like Kazim's like, the curved hilt will adjust. Require some adjustment, but it'll probably suit your style really well. So, curved hilt, pretty cool. Gives him a little bit unique. Interesting that the Sith don't build their own lightsabers. At least, I guess not here.
I think for a Jedi, a lightsaber is like, when you think about it, like a lightsaber it's a commitment. It's a weapon, but you never want to use it as a weapon. It is defense.
Right.
It is meant for that, and there's like a lot of thought that comes into it, and you need to make it yourself so you're connected. Sith want to kill people with it. It's like it is a weapon of destruction, and that's what it's good at. That's what I'm going to use it. It is a finely honed tool for that. I just need a lightsaber. So obviously Sith do create their own lightsabers, and maybe this is just a thing here, but it's like, it didn't even stand out to me that much. I definitely thought he built his own. But also I think Sith philosophy doesn't dictate that it needs to happen that way at all.
Yeah, we also find out that the reason he has his master's lightsaber is because he killed his master.
Yeah.
Very old school Sith like,
It is.
It's like, hey, he didn't have anything else to teach me. I'd gotten better than him, so I killed him. And I've been holding on to the saber until I felt there was somebody worthy of it, and here you go. Okay.
Just because.
And Elizabeth Bane's like, kind of like, that's pretty hardcore, man.
I'm really interested to see how Bane's. It's interesting to see how his philosophy is evolving, and how it's taking things from people. Like, we literally just had an instance where Bane is like, I'm not going to kill Sirac for no reason. And then we have Qasim, this guy that he's been working with, is very close, he looks up to, is just like, I just killed my master. I just did it. And I can imagine,
because I could.
Yep, because I could. And it's like, I think Bane would take, maybe not umbrage with that, maybe not be like, oh, you shouldn't have done that, but be like, was that a wasted opportunity? You know what I mean? Like, was there something more you could have done there? Could you have? And it's just, to me, that's how Bane thinks. Bane is the opportunist. He's always looking for the opening.
Yeah.
And he wants to have every path available to him.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's just funny and interesting to see that develop.
And knowing where it's all going.
Yeah. That too.
Yep. So next morning, Bane goes to see Cordis, and Cordis is like, okay, so, you've redeemed yourself, whatever you want to say. And so all these private lesson stuff, that's got to stop, because we don't want to be encouraging the other students to do the same thing, basically. And now you're not excommunicado anymore, but you got to stop that, and you got to stop using the library at all, basically. And that's the part where Bane's like, wait, what? What do you mean?
This is stupid.
This is dumb. And Cordis like, nah, you gotta stop looking at the past. Gotta look into the future. And Bane's like, nah, I don't think so. And argues with him about it pretty vehemently. And then also says, like, I think there's more to learn from the dead, like the ancient Sith lords, like in the Valley of the Sith, where their ghosts are supposed to still be, than there are from the living masters here. At this, Quartus is like, all right, get out. If you think so, go do it. And Bane's like, all right, I'm out.
It is so hard knowing how this book ends. I just think that he curious to see where that goes. I would just I do love the Valley of the Dark Lords, just because that is connective tissue in Star Wars that keeps coming back. Those Sith Lords going all the way back to Tales of the Jedi, Golden Age of the Sith, that kind of stuff, the Great Hyperspace War. And just the fact that new things keep continuing to make it relevant. It keeps coming back in canon. It has shown up a couple times, but like media all throughout the years and Legends just routinely mined that as a bountiful wellspring of knowledge, content, information.
Yeah.
I love it. But that's where we end, is it not?
That is where we end.
Bane running off to the Valley of the Dark Lords.
Yeah, a very good ending to a section of reading.
I finished it on like Wednesday, and I'm like, God, I have to wait this whole time. Like, the good thing, I love it when we end on a cliffhanger. It's always fun, but then you've ended on a cliffhanger.
Torturous as a reader, like,
as someone who truly loves these books and wants to keep reading, yeah, it sucks. It sucks.
If I was reading this on my own time, I would definitely keep going.
Exactly. If I was reading on my own, I would just be plowing through this. But I don't know. What are we reading next time, Cole?
Doing 18 through 22.
Okay. Reasonable. Not quite as long as I would like, but it is what it is. We make do. Until next time, Cole, where can people find you on the internet?
I am at Mando Wraith and all the different social media stuff, and I'm on Skyhoppers usually, where this week we didn't get to record, but we'll probably get to next week. You know.
I think we will next week. It's just hard. There's some growing pains for everybody right now.
Yeah.
It exists. It's still alive. But, hey, if you're there for us.
And Tales of the Jedi this week, so there'll be a lot to talk about, potentially.
I'm not ready. So, this podcast exists on Twitter at Obroa-Skai Pod. You can email us, obroaskywalkers@gmail.com, and maybe most excitingly, you can now hang out with us while we record the episodes. YouTube.com. I don't know if you search Obroa Skywalkers. If you search Obroa Skywalkers, you'll probably find it. We'll put the link on our Twitter bio or something too, just so you know where it is. And since we've started, every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern time, we've been doing it. We'll try to let everyone know if it's not going to happen, just so people aren't sitting around waiting for something that isn't coming. But thanks to Mogo for hanging out with us. I saw that Fetmatic was here earlier. Thanks to Torch, was also here for a while. Don't know if they stuck around, but thanks for showing up at all. It's fun. It's nice to know there are people out there that care about what we're doing. And here's something to chew on for the next week. Mogo, I don't know what I said or what either of us said that made this come up, but it's an interesting question all the same. As a Legends fan, do you prefer, I'm talking to you now, library patrons, do you prefer the prequel / lore building books in Legends? So I would assume that means, stuff that is in some way, shape, or form playing off something that exists. So like Clone Wars media or things that are just a little more standalone and maybe kind of just expand the universe a little bit more. Or do you prefer the OT sequel continuations of the Bantam era? Not only the Bantam era, but, that's what I think of. When I think of, what is the most like a Star Wars trilogy and a continuation of that, it's the Bantam era, for sure. So, yeah. I don't know. Just something to chew on. If you got thoughts, you can tweet us. You can send us an email. We'd love to hear either way. Oh, it's getting late. It's not that late, but Peepaw Ben has to go to bed. So, as Dakota would say. So, until next time, library patrons, please make your final selections. The library closes in 20 minutes. Well, Mogo, thanks for hanging out with us. Fetmatic, Torch, if you're still here, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks to anyone else who's come in. And yeah, Mogo, I didn't say there was no Skyhoppers this weekend because we didn't know until literally about the time we were supposed to be recording. So, it do be like that. And truthfully, I mean, I'm still getting used to I've recorded a podcast on Wednesdays for the last 6 years. So
Long time.
So yeah, so it's kind of hard to just magically switch to Sunday and be like, yes, I podcast on Sunday mornings now. No, what? No, I'm still learning. I'm only human. But Eva just is moving. Dakota was busy. I knew Dakota would be busy because he was had recovering from his big to do, his big celebration. I know some people stayed. They camped out at his family's house in French Lick, and it seemed like a lot of fun. But I asked him just for good measure, basically, be like, "You gonna be there on Sunday?" And he's like, "No." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine, absolutely fine. I understand that." Oh, but I'm gonna take the stream down. Thanks for hanging out, Mogo. If you're watching from the future, thanks for watching. This is, I guess, the first. This is the first. Well, actually, Mogo, to answer your question, Skyharper's recording time has changed. Maybe slightly in season 2, but we've been on Wednesday. We were on Wednesday the whole time, weren't we?
I think so.
Maybe when we started, we did a couple different days, but Wednesday has consistently stayed the day that I think people had tried to keep clear. But yeah, Skyhoppers is definitely going through a growth period right now, but it will come out the other side. And Mogo, thank you for sticking with it. Thank you for sticking with it through the growth period. But yeah, taking the stream down now. Thanks for hanging out. We'll talk soon.
Sayonara.